Firstly, I would like to introduce you on behalf of the mission, and thank you for doing this with us today. For those who do not know Yash, he's an expert for our masterclass today on product market fitment. He's also the co-founder of Client Joy, which is an all-in-one CRM soft solution and a growth engine for freelancers businesses to manage leads, proposals, clients, invoicing, and revenues. Today, he will be sharing his experience on building his business and the learnings with a few frameworks for all of you, which you can implement in your day-to-day lives, as well as evaluating market needs with his real-life case studies. I warmly welcome Yash for today's session, and I am 100% confident of making this a super engaging session. Having attended a session with him in person, I believe he's the right expert for this kind of session and the topic. Over to you, Yash. Thank you.
Hey, awesome, Ed. Thank you for having me, and thank you everyone who's joined in. I hope this will be valuable. So basically, to talk about product market fit, primarily my idea was that I'll firstly sort of condense some thoughts into a presentation, share my screen, and kind of take everyone through that. And then, or at any point of time where you deem fit, we could stop to answer questions, or we could do that towards the end. So I'll just share my screen. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
It is.
Perfect. So I just put it in the presentation mode. Awesome. So we're going to talk about product market fit 101. Just a little bit before that, I also just talk a little bit about myself. The idea of talking about who I am, where I come from, and the company that I run is essentially to offer context, right? So I fundamentally believe that there are no laws as far as growing a company or building a startup is concerned. There are always principles, and principles are always can only be applied in context, right? And so this introduction is my way of offering you some amount of context that these things, whatever I'm about to say, they worked for me and my business, for the kind of business that it is and the time that we are running this in, right? So a little bit about me. I did mechanical engineering from NITS, and then I worked as an investment banker for a bit before starting an IT services company that was offering web and mobile applications in SaaS, fintech, and e-commerce. We grew that IT service company from a 2-people team to a 55-people team. Won a couple of awards along the way, and realized some challenges that we were facing. And so now we run Client Joy, which is a B2B SaaS product, right? And so Client Joy helps over 4,000 odd agencies and 9,000 odd freelancers in 90 plus countries to help them with the complete client lifecycle from prospect to payment. We have an average rating of about 4.8 on 5 on Google, Capterra, Trustpilot, couple of badges from G2, and preferred partners with Stripe, PayPal, Payoneer, Razorpay, and InstaMojo as well. I'll not go into details about the features of the product, but what's important to understand is that it's a low ticket vertical SaaS, right? So we charge fairly small amount for access to the product. We do not cater to all industries at once. We cater to a particular vertical, which is the agency and freelancer or service providers vertical. And SaaS is a business model, right? So it's software as a service. And so everything that I'm about to say comes from the background of me doing some amount of engineering, some amount of investment banking, some amount of running an IT service agency, and building a SaaS product that we've been building for a while now, and from acquiring the customers that we have as of now, from the places that we've acquired and for the prices that we've acquired and the market that we've acquired them from, right? And so here's a little bit of structure on what we are going to talk about today, right? So the first thing that we'll talk about is what is product market fit, right? So a lot of times, and I'll talk about it when we come to that. So what are some of the symptoms of product market fit where you can realize that, hey, you are getting there? What are some of the tried and tested ways of achieving product market fit? How can you run experiments? How can you pivot? And then how do you optimize for survival until you reach product market fit, right? So that's a little bit of context. So this is one great quote from Spider-Man that I love, that I'm assuming everyone loves. With great power comes great responsibility. However, if you are a founder of a digital product, you have great responsibility for sure. And it could feel like And a lot of times it could feel like that you don't have a lot of power because there are so many variables that are happening in terms of acquiring customers, in terms of onboarding them, in terms of what should the pricing be, what should be the feature release be, building the team, raising a round of funds. So there are so many different battles that you're fighting on a day-to-day basis, and you have a far greater responsibility as well. And it could feel like you don't have any power. And so we'll try to what we'll do is during this conversation, we'll try to identify some systems and some processes and some metrics to figure out how you can systematically get to the stage of product market fit in terms of the approach. So now that you have context, let's talk about PMF a bit, right? 99% of the times is what I've seen, and I've made this mistake a lot of times as well. 99% of the time, product market fit is identified incorrectly, right? So large number of people will think that they already have achieved PMF, but it is not the case. And the reason why that happens is because it's a very loosely defined term, right? So it's not properly defined. It's a fairly flexible defined. So a lot of times PMF is confused with my customers want my product, or customers want my product. So just because the customer is asking for your product or is willing to pay for your product, or more and more customers are willing to pay for the product that you are selling, you start to think that you are getting to PMF. It is close, but you still don't have PMF just because you are able to close your sales. The other reason is because you typically, the founder of a company is comfortable building the product, right? Because that is 100% in their control, and so they are led to believe, or they sometimes also develop this thought process, which I had for the longest time, is that the reason why we don't have product market fit is because the product is not good enough, right? So this one product needs this one new feature or these three new features. And once we build that, then we'll be able to achieve product market fit, right? And so just because you have the sense of control when it comes to the product, we fundamentally change our thought process from figuring out that product market fit mein market bhi hai, right? And so we start focusing only on the product and not necessarily on the distribution as well. And so these are the three primary reasons, at least with me and with some other founders that I've seen, is why PMF is incorrectly identified most of the times, right? So what actually does PMF look like, right? So once you have product market fit, what could it look like? So these are four things that you will find. So the first is that your whatever your product is, it will start going down, right? So you're getting a lot of usage, your server bills are going up, and you're worried that you'll not be able to pay for them, or the servers will not be able to scale, or you need to have expert people to be able to manage your servers. That's one of the things that happens once you achieve PMF. The second is growth will start to kill you, and so you don't have absolutely any time to optimize. Whatever comes your way, you just take it and then you move on, because you just absolutely don't have time. You're working 15-16 hours a day just to fulfill all the requests that you're getting from your customers, or all the support tickets that you're getting from your customers. The market will start pushing you to fulfill their orders, right? So the market will actually threaten the relationship that you have with them if you are unable to fulfill their orders. So that's also something that happens, and customers will start to push it, right? So your customers will start to push you to ship your product faster, build more features, make it more robust, and so on and so forth, right? So once 2 or 3 of these things start happening with you, that is primarily what your product market fit would look like. And here are some symptoms of PMF, right? So typically, when you are about to achieve PMF, the founder will start to burn out, right? Because the founder is doing, or the founding team is doing a lot of support calls and sales calls back to back. There will be a lot of financial irregularities in the startup as well. So you are cash flow positive, but you don't have time to do paperwork. The team is being pushed, so everyone is doing everything all the time for the customer, because that's number one priority. You have absolutely no uncertainty, right? So you clearly know that this works. So for this market, this price point, this journey, these questions, this positioning, these are some of the things that works, and there's absolutely no uncertainty about it. You are high on confidence, right? So you actually, when you're burning out, you don't get tired, you feel satisfied, right? And so you're riding super high on confidence. There's a pep in your step, and you stop offering. Typically, this is another thing that happens, that you stop offering any discounts or anything like that, right? So you just, there's so much amount of demand for the product that you have, that the approach essentially becomes that I don't have time to waste in negotiation. It's my way or the highway, right? With the customers, that's the approach that you start taking. And these are some of the symptoms of PMF, right? So just because a customer purchases your product, or just because the product is nice, wins some awards, get some reviews, just because the term is not yet very defined, or it's fairly loosely defined, it does not mean that you have PMF. If either of these things are happening with you and your organization, these are genuinely some of the symptoms of achieving the product and market fitment, right? So just wanted to kind of clarify that. So I just show how it looked like for ClientJoy. So this is, I think, in May of 2020. So 2020 May, we started measuring our some of our numbers. And so the red, so this is INR lakhs. So the amount of investment that we are making, or the amount of money that we are making. So red is for product. So for product, we are spending somewhere close to about 8 odd lakhs in the month of May 2020, which is engineering costs, server costs, all of those things. For growth, which is our ad spends, our SEO, social media content, the salaries for the people who are working in growth and marketing teams, we are spending somewhere close to about 6 odd lakhs every month. And the revenue for the month of May was somewhere around 2 lakhs. Right. And so, so this at the time we didn't know, but this was in now we know, with the benefit of hindsight, that this was the start of product market fit, right? And so next month, for the month of June, the revenue went from 2 to 2.5. Our product engineering costs went up a little bit. Our growth costs remain similarly. For the month of July, the revenue became 5.5. So we doubled from what we did in June. However, our product engineering costs and our growth costs are still in the plus or minus 5% of what they used to be there for the previous month. For the month of August, our revenue actually surpasses the amount that we are investing in growth. So now the revenue is paying for all the ads that we are running, or all the people that we have, or all the agencies that we are working with at that point of time. So for the month of August, we do somewhere close to about 7.5 lakhs in monthly revenue. For the month of September, we actually surpass the product cost as well. So for the month of September, we do somewhere close to about 10 odd lakhs. And so, and all of this, and then for the month of October, we reach about 14.5 lakhs, right? Now, these are very, very small numbers. The graph then also tends to go that way, while the product and the growth costs kind of remain similarly. But the point that I'm trying to drive over here is that, and this is something that you'll only be able to figure out in hindsight, right? So the way that this works is that you will do things to achieve product market fit. And then once it has been achieved over a couple of months, you'll then start realize that, oh, we started achieving the PMF at that point of time. Like that was 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 2 months ago, whatever the case may be, right? And so you can see that from the month of May to the month of October, our growth and the spends that we do on customer acquisition and the spends that we do on product and its engineering, they are not changing, right? So they are 10% plus or minus variation. However, the revenue essentially went from about 2 odd lakhs to about 14 odd lakhs, right? And so what this means is that we were doing the same activities, we were investing the same amount of funds, we were putting in the same amount of effort, we were doing everything the same. But some things changed within the product or within the market, and we'll talk about that a little bit. That essentially escalated the amount of customers that we were getting from the month of May to October. right? And this is May 2020. Iske baad se we started measuring a lot more metrics as well. But this kind of gives you a very fairly simple and a clear idea as to what happens when you start to see some amount of product market fit, right? So here's an important thing that I'd like you to remember. If there's one thing that you take away from this session, let it be this, that the goal is not to achieve the product market fit. The goal is always to listen to customers, iterate, experiment, pivot, and survive until PMF happens, right? So there's no one in the world will be able to come to you and tell you, or you will yourself come to the realization that this needs to happen, and then you'll achieve PMF, right? So there's no goal post. You don't know that the race finishes at 100 meters. There's no way to know where is the finishing line, which in this case is PMF. You don't know where is the finishing line. And so what you will need to do is you'll need to listen to your customers. The goal has to be that you listen to your customers, you iterate, experiment, pivot, and survive till the race finishes, right? And so you're not necessarily looking to achieve PMF. You are doing these 4 or 5 activities. And then as a consequence of doing these 4 or 5 activities, you reach to the PMF. And then after you hit PMF, it's actually, I mean, a good way to put it is that if you achieve PMF and then if your company shuts down, then it was your company to lose, right? So then you did something really bad with the organization, because once the PMF is hit, then things become a lot more simpler, so then you're essentially focusing on building the organization, right? And not necessarily figuring out what the problem is, figuring out what the distribution channel is, figuring out what the target market is. Most of the difficult questions, most of the unknown unknowns have already been answered once you achieve your PMF, right? And so now that we've spoken a little bit about what is not PMF and why people might feel that they've achieved PMF, and they could confuse the fact that the reason why they're selling is equal to PMF, and what it looked like for client a little bit. Let's look at how you could do that for your organization or for your startup as well, right? So we just get a couple of things out of the way. Stages for any startup is you start with an idea, some amount of research, you prototype whatever you've thought about it, whatever conclusions that you got from the research, and then you launch. The next step is to get some amount of traction and monetization. The step after is to invest in growth, and then you start to build your organization. Then you start to scale your company and build your company. So idea and research is basically where you're trying to identify an unmet need for a large market that is growing and is willing to pay. Prototype launch is building a small team to prototype the MVP, which is minimum viable product that can be used by some lower hanging fruits of your target market, right? So Priya, do you have a question?
Yes, I was just about to say a lot of participants here probably can relate to this stage of their journey as well. I probably want a few hands up on for the participants who are in the growth stage, and a few who are in the product or prototype stage. So, we'll be able to gauge the audience as well. So
Sure.
everyone who's in the growth stage right now, if you could show of hands on the chat. Oh, you can continue. We'll probably take it as it is as well. But I just wanted to understand the kind of participants we have, what stage of the journey are they, and we can probably tweak a bit of our Q&As accordingly as well.
Sure, yeah. Sure. And if there are any challenges if I'm going too fast, if it's too slow, I need to pick up the pace, just please let me know, and I'd be able to do that as well. The other quick thing that I'd also mention is, while people are raising hands in the chat, whether they're on the growth stage or not, let me just clarify, because growth can happen. Like, I can go from 10 customers to 20 customers, and that is also growth. And I can go from 200 customers to 300 customers, and that is also growth, right? So the way that we look at, so the sense in which I mean growth over here is that if you're a B2C product, so raise hands in the chat for whether you are growth or not. If you're a B2C product, then you've got to have 10,000 daily active users, right? 10,000 daily active users of your product or service, whatever it is that you're offering. If you're a B2B product or a revenue generating product, then you've got to do at least $3 million a year, right? In revenue. So that is the context in which I've written growth over here, right? So idea, research, prototype and launch, traction and monetization. Growth is 10,000 DAU or $3 million in annual revenue. And so raise hands according to that. And so the definitions also that I've written is primarily in that context, right? So when I say traction and monetization is you start getting some early customers who are paying to use your product or service, and get them to talk about your product in other places. So they could talk about it in review platforms, they could talk about it in the events that they are attending, they could talk about it in the networks that they are a part of or organizations that they are a part of. Growth is where you start investing in your branding, marketing, sales, and growth efforts, right? So when you reach growth, when you reach, let's say, 10,000 DAUs or $3 million in annual sales, the conversation is not whether the problem needs to be solved or the market is big enough. The conversation is how much money do you need to spread this like wildfire, right? And so you're essentially raising funds or having conversation with strategic partners to fuel your top of the funnel, right? Everything that happens after your top of the funnel has been optimized, right? Building the company is where you start recruiting experienced people, right? So people who have 10 years, 12 years, 13 years of work experience in doing a specific, very specialized job. And you get a better office, you build a better infrastructure, you start to develop your middle management, and you start working externally, right? You start working with people who are outside your organization as well. You start working with agencies, and these agencies could be, obviously investment bankers to IT companies to design, digital marketing, whatever the case may be, right? And so where does PMF come in? So initial PMF is basically from the idea and research, prototype and launch, traction and monetization, right? This is primarily where the initial PMF comes in. So most startups, most companies die before reaching to 10,000 MAUs, 10,000 DAUs or $3 million in annual revenue, right? This is where most companies die. And then once you reach there, then you are doing continuous improvement on the PMF. And so you're refining your PMF between the traction, monetization, and growth stages. And so that is primarily where the product market fit journey begins, and then you kind of start to make it more efficient, make it more clearer, make it more targeted. And so now now that we have that clear as well, let's start with some of the steps that you could take towards achieving your PMF, right? So typical journey. So we saw some stages of a startup. Typical journey of any product that you're building is you identified a need or a problem. You speak to prospects who you think are the prospects. You write a scope document of sorts. You have some amount of documentation. You create Miro boards or mood boards or whatever the case may be. Then you start building your MVP, and then after the MVP comes PMF, which is what we are going to talk about. And then if you achieve that, then that's victory, right? That's where the race finishes, and you've done your bit. So about achieving PMF with the product, here are some of the things that I've learned the hard way, right? So the first is that obviously listen to customers' problems, but do not listen to their solutions, right? So a lot of the times when you ask your customer an open-ended question, so when we would go and ask them, hey, what are some of the things that you're doing to grow your organization? They would, or what are some of the challenges that you're facing in growing your organization? Instead of answering my question, they would jump on to the solutions, right? So they'd answer it in a way where they'd say, hey, if we had this, then we'd be able to grow better. If we had that, then we'd be able to grow better. And it's very easy to get carried away to become a part of that conversation because some of the solutions that they are proposing are some of the solutions that you are working on as well. And so then that bias kind of comes in. That is exactly what we are doing as well, and that's kind of ancillary to what we are doing. That's tangential to what we are doing. So please don't do that, right? So ask open-ended questions. Very simple format. Figure out what questions will get you answers to these, right? So open-ended questions are fairly simple. There are three things that you need to know. First is where your customer is today. Second is where does your customer need to be or wants to be, and what is stopping them from getting there, right? Where are they today? Where do they need to be? And what is stopping them from getting there? That's primarily so you can define like 20, 25, 30 questions for your customers, but these are the three key answers that you are looking for. What is stopping them from getting where they want to be? what could help them is something that you should not listen from your customers. The next is prototyping and identifying KPIs, which is something that we'll talk about. User testing and measurement also is something that we'll talk about. If it worked, great. If it didn't, you go back to step one, right? So you start again listening to customers' problems, not to their solutions. You prototype, identify KPI, test it, measure it, and then kind of run the loop over and over and over again, right? And so let's talk about rapid prototyping, right? It's building a full product is the most expensive way of going about achieving product market fit, right? So if you have that sort of money, which is what we call as FU money. So like if you have that sort of money, then please go ahead and do it. But if not, then please don't, right? So do not start by building the full product. It's super expensive. No matter how much experience that you have in the market, doesn't matter what your background is, doesn't matter how strong your convictions are, doesn't matter how passionately do you feel about the problem. Don't start by building the full product. If you believe
Yash,
it is going to take. Sure.
Sorry, if I can just intervene and ask, how did the prototype begin for you? Did you build the whole
Sure.
product? Do you have any learnings on the prototyping stage?
Yeah.
Did you kind of redo your product when you were doing this, that this does not work? So if you can just throw some light on
Talk
that
about
towards
that as
the end.
well.
Yeah.
No, I'll be happy to talk about it right now as well. So a couple of things here. So our product is still not finished. We are only about 35-40% there. The vision is to build an operating system for agencies and freelancers, right? And that includes project management, that includes integrations with their banks, that includes ticketing, that includes helping them manage their team. All of these are absent on ClientJoy as of now. So we are only about 35-40% done in terms of building the whole product from start to finish. What we started with was that we started with one of the key problems that almost all of our prospects said, which was that, and most CRMs in the world end when you acquire the customer, right? So if you look at HubSpot, Pipedrive, any of the CRMs that exist in the world, once you close that lead, whether it is closed won or closed lost, that's where those CRMs end. And there's no way, so then they have to shift the project management system that they have for them to be able to update their clients, collaborate with the clients, work with their clients. And more often than not, the conversations happen on email and WhatsApp, right? So we knew that there are these 8, 10, 12 big modules that we've got to build, but we started with just building a portal, right? So just building a client portal, a portal that will help agency and freelancer connect with each other, collaborate, and offer a better experience to their clients. And then once we had that, we started getting people to sign up. We started getting people to use it. And then we started building other things. So we started building, as an example, we started building project management actually, because we thought that that is much more closer to the client portal theme that we had going on for ourselves. So we started building project management, but then we realized that while collaboration for the project is a problem between client and agencies, agencies are not the decision makers as far as which project management system is going to be used. Right? So typically, the client will define the project management system and not the agencies. And so there's no way that our customer will be able to convince their clients to come and use ClientJoy for managing the project, because it is a relationship that's driven by the client. And so we started releasing features and then talking to the customers. And so they said, yeah, I mean, project management is great. We'd love to manage the projects here, this and that. And so we'd go and meet with them every other week and start to have a conversation with them that, hey, you said you like it. You said what we built is useful for you, but you're not using it. Why are you not using it? And that's when we started discovering the horror, which is the fact that the collaboration in that relationship is driven by their clients and not by them. And that's when we learned this in a very expensive way, which is listening to their problems and not to their solutions, right? So and so then we shifted our focus to other modules, which kind of started helping us out to grow, right? And so if you believe, so start with like the minimum viable product, right? This is something that you must have heard a lot of times. But if you believe that it's going to take 3 to 4 months, budget at least 9 months, because that's how long it is going to take. No, doesn't matter. As a non-tech co-founder, it doesn't matter how confident your tech co-founder is. If your tech co-founder is saying that it's going to take 3 to 4 months, it's going to take 9 months easily, because they are looking at only the feature list that you've discussed, not to make it robust, not to make it compliant, not to make it, I mean, so there are n number of things that they are not considering, right? And there will always be bugs. So do not outsource your prototype, right? It needs to change quickly, and you have to do rapidly. You have to make changes, and having an agency do it for you is neither capital nor time efficient, right? And do not build. So as an example, some of the things that you can chuck off of while building your MVPs is building automations within the product, monetization, onboarding, all of these things you can forget. Do invest in doing things that don't scale, right? So do as many things manually as possible. Do as many things manually with your clients as possible, that will give you touch points with your clients and with your customers as well, right? We'll now talk a little bit around identifying KPIs, right? And so, so figure out what are some of the key metrics that you should measure for each and everything that you release, right? So, I'll give you a fairly simple example. So, a simple example of a thing that worked for us, right? So as an example, what used to happen is that the journey from I'll get a little bit into client joy now, but so the journey of our customers or our users, connecting with their leads was, they'll come to client joy, there'll be a list of leads, they'll be able to click on a particular lead, go into that page, do email, SMS, WhatsApp, whatever it is that they wanted to do, then come back, go to lead number 2, go to lead number 3, and the journey would kind of continue to happen, right? And so one of the things that was recommended by a team member of ours who works on front-end engineering was that instead of doing page redirections, we could just open a drawer, right? So we could just open a drawer from the left, which would then have like quick information and quick things that they wanted to do, so that our users won't have to jump back from pages to pages, and they'd have a fairly cohesive experience. And then we could also build keyboard shortcuts for that, and then we could have these 8 things that are available in the drawer, and we could design that and so on and so forth, which is a fairly well taken point. It makes sense from product standpoint, but we didn't build the whole thing at once, right? We just built the drawer first, and then we saw how many times were people staying on the drawer or going to the full view of leads. And then we looked at the fact that when they are going on full view of leads, what are some of the things that they are looking for? Are they looking for the phone number? Are they looking for a particular automation? Are they looking for an email? What are they looking for? And then we started bringing that slowly to the drawer on the first page. And then we also saw that they were not using keyboard shortcuts. And so we started onboarding that. We started pushing that, hey, this is something that you could use as well. And so we even forget about the metrics that I've written over here. These were some of the metrics that even we measure now as well. But we even measure the feature level usage, right? So you can use a lot of tools like Mixpanel or Amplitude, which will allow you to measure more than 10,000 events. Amplitude, I think 100,000 events every month, right? So every button click that happens in your product, every hover that happens in your product, every caption that is seen, all of these you'll be able to measure, and you'll be able to draw conclusions from. So we have a question.
I wanted to ask, how often do you redefine your KPIs? So when do you set a KPI, and how long would you measure it for, and then redefine them?
So like the simplest way to think about it is that when a particular KPI is not giving us any meaningful information, we move on, right? So we started. So I'll give you an example of a KPI that we were measuring, and then that information was not meaningful. So as an example, when we were growing, we started measuring how much payments are being collected by our users from their clients, right? So how much money are our users making? It is there on the website. So every month it's about $25 million is what our users are able to collect from their clients. However, and that KPI kind of keeps on changing month on month, week on week as well. So for the month of December, it's going to be fairly less. For the month of January, it will then start picking up. What we started realizing was that as a global product, the amount that was being collected by our users depended on the geography that they are from. And her geography may, at some point of time, something is going on. So we have, so अभी Christmas आएगा, फिर October November में दिवाली था, तो सब businesses का अलग अलग time है season का, right? And so measuring whether they are able to do enough business using Client Joy, whatever number that we get is not an accurate representation of whether Client Joy is helping them or not, right? Because it is much more externally controlled, dependent on their business rather than our performance. And so that's a metric that we use to measure. But then as soon as you start realizing that this metric is not giving you any meaningful information, you stop measuring it, or you stop at least looking at it in terms of your weekly or daily metric. So another thing that we don't measure now is churn, because churn has kind of stabilized. The revenue churn has stabilized to somewhere around 1.5 to 2% month on month. And so we know so now what we've done is we've set an alert in Stripe. If it goes above 2%, just let me know. Right? If it doesn't go above 2%, then we don't need to measure it, because it's fairly stable at 1.5 to 2%, and it's a little better than the industry standard as well. But when we started with the product, these were some of the metrics that we were measuring. So weekly unique website visitors, how many new people came to the website every week, how many active users are there on the product, how much net new MRR were we able to generate. So net new MRR is MRR of the current month minus MRR, so monthly recurring revenue of the current month minus monthly recurring revenue of the previous month, minus the churn that happened in the current month, plus the number of new subscriptions that you sold in the current month, right? So we measure that every week. Churn from each feature, right? So a person or a customer may not churn from the whole product. They may not stop paying for it. But since there are more than 150 features, which feature did they start using and they were using actively and then they stopped, right? And so why did that happen? Retention for each and every feature, which is just opposite of that. At least 5 weekly customer calls that are greater than 30 minutes for both Anupama and I. So she would do 5, I do 5. Weekly net promoter score. So net promoter score is fairly simple metric. 8 to 10, you're doing well. So it's a score out of 10 that your customers give to you. 8 to 10 is okay, is great. So it's not okay, it's great. Anywhere between 4 to 7 is okay-ish. You want to improve. Anything less than 4 is that you're doing very, very poorly. Net promoter score basically tells you how many of your customers are willing to stand up for you. How many of your customers will be willing to recommend your product to their connections, right? And so you may have participated in a lot of NPS in case you've not implemented it. A lot of times you'll be using a product and it will say, how likely are you to recommend this product to your friends or colleagues? And you just put in an 8 or 5 or 7 or whatever the case may be. And that is measuring weekly NPS. Weekly payments collected for users, which is something that we stopped measuring now. Weekly leads created by the users, weekly clients added by the users, and returning usage. Right? So you could get a lot of people to sign up to your product, to start using your product because you were mentioned on your story, or you were mentioned on TechCrunch, or you were mentioned in Ing42, or you won some award, or whatever the case may be, right? So you could get some amount of attention on day one, but then is that attention being retained over a period of 15 days, 30 days, 45 days, and 90 days, right? How many of those people are staying with you for an extended period of time? So these are my point being that these were some of the things that we used to measure. We still measure most of these. I'd recommend that you identify what KPIs are for you, right? And for your business as well. And so my point is also the fact that even if you're not running a digital product, right? Let's say you're running a physical, you're selling a physical product, there would be your KPIs as well. And so you can draw parallels from these, right? A little on iterating and pivoting. So here's what we used to do. Ask ourselves every week, what steps did we take this week that ensured some amount of movements in the metrics that we were measuring? And did it achieve the desired result, right? So a lot of times what ends up happening is that your day is not driven by you. Your day is driven by your commitments. And so you have some investor calls, you have some meetings, you have, you're recruiting or building your team or whatever the case may be. So since your day is, as a founder, is primarily driven by external factors, weeks after weeks pass before you are able to make any tangible progress on your metrics, right? So one is we don't measure enough. Two is we measure, but then weeks after weeks pass and we don't ask ourselves this question. So ask yourself this question, right? Week after week, what were the steps that you took last week that ensured movements in the metrics that you were measuring? Supriya, we have a question.
I just wanted to say, अगर हम इसे थोड़ा थोड़ा हिंदी में करेंगे, some of our audience would like to keep it multilingual, so बीच बीच में हम हिंदी इंग्लिश यूज कर सकते हैं. पंजाबी not necessary given your comfort language, but अगर हम हिंदी में explain कर सकते हैं कुछ examples, it will be relatable.
Done, yeah, done, absolutely. So another thing is laser sharp focus होना चाहिए on the KPIs that you are measuring and थोड़ा सा paranoia, right? So a lot of times क्या होगा कि मतलब you start to measure it and then आपको ऐसा लगेगा कि यार ये तो accurately measure हो ही नहीं सकता है. जो आपका पहला वाला एक सेशन हुआ था ब्रांडिंग के ऊपर, वो सेशन में मेरा भी यही क्वेश्चन था और उन्होंने भी आंसर किया. सो बहुत सारे और लोगों का क्वेश्चन था कि ब्रांडिंग के अंदर जो हम पैसा डालते हैं वो कैसे मेजर करेंगे कि उसका आरओआई कितना आया और किस तरह से आया. और तो अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल स्टॉप मेजरिंग दैट, राइट? अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल विल स्टॉप मेजरिंग बहुत सारे इंपॉर्टेंट मेट्रिक्स बिकॉज ऐसा लगता है कि यार ये तो मेजर हो ही नहीं सकता एक्यूरेटली. तो कोई बात नहीं, इनएक्यूरेटली मेजर करो, पर जितना हो सकता है उतना मेजर करो, राइट? अगर आप एक्सपेरिमेंट्स रन कर रहे हो, और अपन एक्सपेरिमेंट्स के बारे में भी बात करेंगे इन अ बिट, अगर आप एक्सपेरिमेंट्स रन कर रहे हो तो डोंट रन मल्टीपल एक्सपेरिमेंट्स एट वंस. एक एक्सपेरिमेंट विथ वन वेरिएबल एट अ पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम, राइट? नहीं तो आपको पता ही नहीं चलेगा कि ये मैट्रिक ऊपर गया या नीचे गया, ये क्यों गया, ये मतलब पहले एक्सपेरिमेंट की वजह से गया या तीसरे एक्सपेरिमेंट की वजह से गया, राइट? सो दैट विल स्टार्ट टू बिकम योर चैलेंज एंड देन we'll talk about how to run experiments, right? So a couple of things. So product market fit में अभी तक हम लोगों ने काफी प्रोडक्ट की बात करी, पर उसमें मार्केट भी है, तो हम मार्केट के ऊपर इटरेट करना भूल जाते हैं काफी बार, राइट? सो इटरेट अक्रॉस, इट्स नॉट जस्ट, आई मीन ऑब्वियसली प्रोडक्ट में तो करना ही है, पर मार्केट में भी आपका पोजिशनिंग और आउटरीच चैनल्स के बीच में भी आप इटरेट करना शुरू करो, राइट? सो एज एन एग्जांपल, we thought कि यार क्लाइंट जो है तो एजेंसी और फ्रीलांसर के लिए हैं, वो काम ढूंढते हैं लिंक्डइन पे, तो लिंक्डइन के ऊपर हम एड्स चलाएंगे. हम वो पॉडकास्ट बहुत चल रहा है तो हम भी एक पॉडकास्ट शुरू करेंगे, तो लोग सुनेंगे उसको एंड देन पीपल विल कम टू क्लाइंट जो है. एंड देन वी रियलाइज्ड कि यार उसके ऊपर ही ट्रेड किया कि चलो लिंक्डइन एड्स की जगह पे फेसबुक कम्युनिटीज के अंदर ट्राई करके देखते हैं तो क्या होता है. उसकी जगह पे स्लैक कम्युनिटीज में क्या होता है, फेसबुक के ऊपर रीटारगेटिंग एड्स चलाते हैं तो क्या होता है. पॉडकास्ट की जगह पे अगर हम लोग छोटी छोटी रील्स बनाएं, पॉडकास्ट तो रिकॉर्ड करेंगे पर उसकी छोटी सी रील बनाएं तो क्या होता है. अगर खुद ही पूरा शॉर्ट वीडियो बनाएं तो देन व्हाट एंड्स अप हैपनिंग. एंड so iterate not just on the product but also on the acquisition channels that you are running, right? So there are n number of acquisition channels that you'll be able to figure out. So the simplest way to figure out is कि आपका जो कस्टमर है वो कोई चीज सीखने के लिए कहाँ जाता है, वो खुद को ग्रो करने के लिए कहाँ जाता है, वो कोई चीज खरीदने के लिए कहाँ जाता है, वो और लोगों के साथ कनेक्ट करने के लिए कहाँ जाता है. तो उसके प्रोफेशनल लाइफ की जितनी भी एक्टिविटीज हैं, वो एक्टिविटीज करने के लिए कौन से प्लेटफॉर्म्स के ऊपर या कौन से फिजिकल प्लेटफॉर्म्स भी हो सकते हैं, कुछ डिजिटल प्लेटफॉर्म्स भी हो सकते हैं, वो कहाँ कहाँ जाता है, वहां पर आप कैसे प्रेजेंट हो सकते हो और उनमें अंदर अंदर आप इटरेट किस तरह से कर सकते हो, right? And then so market ke side pe bhi you'll have to run those experiments. I'll give you an example of positioning experimentation that we did, right? So as client, there were multiple things that we started with. One of the things that we would say is कि better half of your agency है ना, कि आपका एजेंसी है, वो एक आपका बिजनेस है, हम उसकी बीवी हैं या हम उसके पति हैं, तो आपको क्लाइंट जो यूज करना चाहिए, we are a better half of your business. We then said अच्छा नहीं ये तो अच्छा नहीं चल रहा है, देखते हैं कुछ और ट्राई करके देखते हैं. तो another thing that we said कि ये मतलब क्रिएटिव कॉपीराइटिंग छोड़ देते हैं, let's tell them what it is, है ना, कि let's see if it is a client life cycle management platform, है ना, कि जो भी आपका क्लाइंट है वो स्टार्ट से फिनिश पूरा लाइफ साइकिल उसका यहाँ पर मैनेज हो सकता है. फिर भी सेड कि यार क्लाइंट लाइफ साइकिल मैनेजमेंट इज नॉट समथिंग दैट पीपल रेजोनेट विद, they are not able to understand that what it is. तो और एक ट्राई किया कि अच्छा ठीक है, क्लाइंट जो विल हेल्प यू कि हम आउटकम ड्रिवन पोजीशनिंग करते हैं, राइट? सो कि वी विल हेल्प यू अक्वायर एंड रिटेन क्लाइंट्स फॉर लाइफ, है ना. सो अगर आप क्लाइंट जो यूज करोगे तो आप अपने क्लाइंट को पूरे लाइफ तक आप उसको सर्व कर सकते हो. एंड देन वी हैड प्रोस्पेक्ट टू पेमेंट प्लेटफॉर्म, which is the one experiment that we are running right now. So right now, if you go to clientjoy.io, you will see prospect to payment platform for agencies that is better than Excel, simpler than HubSpot. Right? That's primarily what we are saying. So ये experiment, ये positioning का example था. आप अपने ads में भी experiments run कर सकते हो. There are n number of experiments that you are running. The only thing is that you only do one experiment at a time or with one variable at a time. Now we'll come back a little bit to the product कि आप अपने जो भी आपने solution बनाए हैं, so you listen to your customers, figured out these are the challenges that they face to acquire the desired outcome. वो solutions को आप test कैसे करोगे? So मतलब बहुत ही simple तरीका है पर बहुत ही painful तरीका है. So आप अपने customer के साथ बैठोगे, चाहे वो Zoom पे हो, चाहे physically हो, और record करोगे कि वो क्या कर रहे हैं. उनको आप एक task assign करोगे कि यार अभी आप ये पेज पे हो और अब आपको क्लाइंट जो का अगर मैं एग्जांपल दूं तो आप ये पेज पे हो पर आपको एक कस्टमर को एक इनवॉइस रेज करके भेजना है जो कि $500 का हो, जिसके ऊपर आप 5% वैट लगाओगे या 18% जीएसटी लगाओगे या ऐसा कुछ करके. सो ये आपने उनको टास्क दिया कि अब ये करो हमारे लिए एंड देन वी विल सी व्हाट हैपेंस. ये टास्क असाइन करने के बाद यू डोंट से एनीथिंग, यू डोंट डू एनीथिंग, यू डोंट टॉक टू देम, यू सिट बैक एंड यू ऑब्जर्व. एंड आपको एक्सट्रीम एगनी होगा, राइट? आपको ऐसा होगा कि अरे उधर ही मैंने बटन डाला हुआ है, तो उधर बटन को क्यों नहीं क्लिक कर रहा है, या तो वहां पर टैप क्यों नहीं कर रहा है, या फिर यहाँ पर तुझे ये डालना चाहिए था, या फिर यहाँ पर तुझे ये लिखना चाहिए था. तो वो काफी टाइम स्टेप 1 पे कोई मिस्टेक करेंगे और स्टेप 6 तक उनको पता ही नहीं चलेगा कि स्टेप 1 पे उन्होंने मिस्टेक किया है, राइट? तो वो चलता जाएगा, फिर स्टेप 6 पे अल्टीमेटली वो टास्क अकम्प्लिश नहीं कर पाएंगे क्योंकि उन्होंने पहले ही मिस्टेक कर दिया था, राइट? एंड सो दैट विल हेल्प यू रियलाइज कि यार अच्छा ये तो क्लाइंट के लिए बहुत पेनफुल हो सकता है, तो स्टेप 1 पे अपने एरर मैसेज दे देते हैं कि आपने ये गलती की है. So this is primarily how you test whatever solution that you build. You do this at least 3 to 4 times a week, right? So you speak to your prospects, speak to your friends or people who are there in the incubation center who resemble your client, and then do this exercise 3 to 4 times a week to test the solution that you're building. I think last but one thing that I'd like to say as far as you are trying to achieve PMF is that हम लोग काफी बार when we are trying to build the product तो हम cost benefit analysis करते हैं कि कस्टमर के लिए कितना बेनिफिशियल है और हमारे लिए कितना सस्ता पड़ेगा इस चीज को बनाना, राइट? और अगर हम सस्ते में बना सकते हैं और कस्टमर का परसीव्ड वैल्यू इसका बहुत ज्यादा होगा तो हम ये चीज बना लेते हैं, right? And that is a good way to think about it as well. But I'd argue that a better way to go about it is कि आप prioritize चीजों को इस तरह से करो that those things that have the highest probability to uncover the biggest unknown variable that you have. तो अगर आपका सबसे बड़ा unknown variable ये है कि मेरे को कोई कस्टमर पे करेगा कि नहीं, या आपका ये biggest variable है कि लोग इसको यूज करेंगे कि नहीं, या आपका ये biggest unknown variable है कि ये फीचर इनको चाहिए कि नहीं, तो आप वो चीज, वो अननोन वेरिएबल के लिए आप अपना प्रायोरिटी को ऑप्टिमाइज करिए इंस्टेड ऑफ डूइंग कॉस्ट बेनिफिट एनालिसिस. अगर इफ यू आर बिफोर पीएमएफ, then the only thing that is stopping you to achieve PMF is the unknowns that you have, right? And so you want to, so आपका काम ही ये है कि आप वो unknowns जो है आपके बिजनेस में, आपके प्रोडक्ट में, आपके कस्टमर में, आपके टारगेट सेगमेंट में, आप उसको वैलिडेट करें, right? And so that's another thing that I would say. One of the things that we did was कि so client जो है ना, क्या होता है कि आप लीड्स भी मैनेज कर सकते हो, डॉक्यूमेंट्स भी भेज सकते हो, कस्टमर्स को मैनेज भी कर सकते हो, पोर्टल बना सकते हो, इनवॉइस भी बना सकते हो, पेमेंट भी ले सकते हो. तो क्योंकि इतनी सारी चीजें हैं तो क्या होता है कि एक और वैल्यू ही क्लाइंट जो है उस चीज से आता है कि आप ये सारी चीजें एक जगह पे कर रहे हैं, राइट? एंड तो क्योंकि ये सिनेरियो है तो क्या होता है कि वो कस्टमर जो है उसको 4 सॉफ्टवेयर से मूव करके क्लाइंट जो है पे आना पड़ेगा और फिर उसको 3 महीना यूज करना पड़ेगा और फिर उसको पता चलेगा कि यार ये मेरे लिए बेनिफिशियल है कि नहीं. तो वहां पर बहुत बड़ा फ्रिक्शन है. तो हमारे वेबसाइट के ऊपर तो हम अच्छी बातें लिख सकते हैं, पर वो आएगा, साइन अप भी कर लेगा, पर वो लीड्स इंपोर्ट करे, फिर उससे कस्टमर्स इंपोर्ट करे, फिर उसके डॉक्यूमेंट्स के टेम्पलेट्स बनाए, फिर वो प्रपोजल्स भेजना शुरू करे, फिर वो इनवॉइसेस बनाए, क्लाइंट के ऊपर पोर्टल के ऊपर क्लाइंट को इन्वाइट करे, पेमेंट रिसीव करे, पेमेंट गेटवेज के साथ इंटीग्रेट करे, ये सब चीजें करेगा. उसके 2-3 महीने बाद उसको वैल्यू दिखनी शुरू होती है. तो ये तो बहुत बड़ा फ्रिक्शन है, राइट? सो अनदर एक्सपेरिमेंट दैट वी रैन व्हिच वर्कड आउट वेल फॉर अस and we still run that, is we built this thing called explore.clientjoy.io, right? So you can, if you're on the web at any point of time, you can go to explore.clientjoy.io, or without signing up to ClientJoy, you'll be able to see how ClientJoy will look like after 3 months of your active usage, right? So जब sign up करते हो तो normally पूरा ClientJoy खाली होता है, तो आपको कुछ दिख नहीं रहा है, डैशबोर्ड है, उसके ऊपर 10 चार्ट्स की जगह है, पर चार्ट में कोई डेटा नहीं है, तो आपको कोई इंसाइट नहीं मिल रहा है। तो अगर आप एक्सप्लोर, सो हम लोग क्या करते हैं कि हमारे एजेंसीज को, हमारे पोटेंशियल कस्टमर्स को explore.clientjoy.io पे भेजते हैं, तो वहां पे जाएगा तो उसको दिखेगा कि यार अच्छा, मेरा एक्टिविटी इस तरह से दिखेगा, मेरा आउटस्टैंडिंग इनवॉइस ऐसा दिखेगा, मेरा प्रपोजल का समरी इस तरह से दिखेगा, लीड्स इस तरह से दिखेगा। अच्छा, वो लीड भी क्रिएट कर सकता है वहां पर उसको पूरा सेल्स पाइपलाइन भरा हुआ दिखेगा, उसके पेमेंट्स और इनवॉइसेस दिखेंगे अलग अलग स्टेजेस में, वो सर्च सॉर्ट फिल्टर कर सकता है, वो सेटिंग्स में जा सकता है, वो सारी चीजें कर सकता है जो उसको 3 महीने बाद करता। तो दैट इज अनदर थिंग दैट हेल्प्ड अस शोकेस वैल्यू टू आवर कस्टमर्स। एंड वहां से वी हैव, एंड सो हम लोग अगर 2 फनल्स मेजर करें कि हमने सेम एड चलाई, वो एड के ऊपर क्लिक करके वो हमारी वेबसाइट के ऊपर आया, तो वेबसाइट से साइन अप का कन्वर्जन रेट इज अबाउट 12%, और वही एड चला करके वही टारगेट में उसी जगह पे, वहां से अगर हम लोग उसको explore.clientjoy.io पे लाए, तो वहां पर दे स्पेंड 7.5 मिनट्स, और उसके बाद का साइन अप रेट इज 80%, राइट? एंड सो दैट इज अ tremendous amount of difference, मतलब it is almost 7.5x of what we would have done otherwise. तो ये सब छोटे छोटे एक्सपेरिमेंट्स आप रन कर सकते हो। So the last thing is figure out how you will survive till you hit PMF, right? The पूरा journey ही, so 2 of the biggest challenges that any startup faces is reaching PMF and building a world class team. These are the 2 challenges, right? So PMF तक पहुंचने के लिए आपको इटरेशंस करने हैं, एक्सपेरिमेंटेशंस करने हैं, कस्टमर के साथ बैठ के समझना है, केपीआईज बनाने हैं, उनको मेजर करना है, हर हफ्ते उसके ऊपर इंप्रूवमेंट का काम करना है। और जब तक आप नहीं पहुंचते वहां तक, तब तक आपका दूसरा काम ये है कि आप किस तरह से जिंदा रहोगे, है ना, कि किस तरह से यू विल मेक श्योर कि आपका कंपनी बंद नहीं हो, राइट? एंड मोस्ट कंपनीज दैट एग्जिट, दे एग्जिट बिफोर पीएमएफ, है ना। सो दुनिया में हम सुनते हैं कि व्हाट्सएप का 18 बिलियन का हो गया, लिंक्डइन का 26 बिलियन का हो गया, ये हो गया, वो हो गया, ये सब आउटलायर्स हैं। all of these acquisitions that happen for large amount of money that you hear are exceptions. They are not mainstream. Mainstream acquisitions are actually not acquisitions, they are acqui-hires, है ना। तो मतलब कंपनी ट्राई कर रही है पीएमएफ हिट करने का, वहां तक पहुंच नहीं पा रही है, पर कोई दूसरा कंपनी आइडेंटिफाई करता है कि हम ये मेरे टेंजेंट में है, तो इसको खरीद लेते हैं, तो यहाँ से 20 लोग भी आ गए, और जो फाउंडर है उनको छोटा सा करोड़, 2 करोड़, 10 करोड़ का एग्जिट भी मिल गया, राइट? सो more comes, so there are like 90-95% of acquisitions that happen, they happen before PMF and not after. Mainstream, whatever you're hearing in the media, these are exceptions and not mainstream. Most investors, so अभी आपको क्वेश्चन ये होगा कि यार पीएमएफ इतना लेट आ रहा है तो हम रेज कैसे करेंगे, पर आप ये सोचो यार कि पीएमएफ आने के बाद स्केल आपको मिल रहा है, तो इन्वेस्टर्स भी ये आइडेंटिफाई कर रहे हैं। जब हम ये बात करते हैं कि आपका टीम बड़ा सॉलिड होना चाहिए, आपका आइडिया अच्छा होना चाहिए, बड़े मार्केट में आप प्रेजेंट हो, ये कर रहे हो, वो कर रहे हो, द रीजन व्हाई द फोकस इज ऑन द टीम अ लॉट, कि इनका एक्सपीरियंस कैसा है, ये लोग कैसे हैं, is because the investor is in early stages, at least up until series A B, the investor is betting कि ये इंसान पीएमएफ ले आएगा, है ना। so that is, so investor भी ये चाहता है कि मैं प्री पीएमएफ कंपनी में इन्वेस्ट करूं और फिर ये पीएमएफ ले आए तो मेरा वैल्यू बहुत बढ़ जाएगा, right? And that is one of the reasons why the kind of the team that you have becomes important, कि आपका कितना rational आपके पास है, आपके पास कितने, and that is why second time founders become even more important, है ना। So अगर आपने पहले एक कंपनी बना के बेची हुई है तो आपका वैल्यू एकदम से मार्केट में बढ़ जाता है, क्योंकि आपको ये सारे चैलेंजेस आप खुद से you've gone through those things as well, right? The last thing that I leave you with is a good product for a large market is a necessary condition. ये तो होना ही चाहिए, but it is not a sufficient one. अगर आपके पास एक अच्छा प्रोडक्ट है एक बड़े मार्केट के लिए, तो वो तो एब्सोल्युटली चाहिए ही चाहिए, पर सिर्फ इतने से हो नहीं जाएगा, है ना। तो ये मत सोचो कि मेरा मार्केट बहुत बड़ा है, मार्केट खुद भी ग्रो कर रहा है, मतलब graveyards are filled with companies. मतलब a simple example that I can think of right now is, think of, मतलब अभी इंडिया में बैन हो गया है वो सब अलग बात है, but think of the companies that were into e-cigarettes, है ना। मतलब e-cigarettes have been around for the longest time, but then Joule came along, hit PMF, and then changed things very, very rapidly, right? आप research करिएगा Joule की case study पे, their growth from 2015 to 2019 or 2020 before it was banned in India and in some parts of US and so on and so forth. So e-cigarette का जो business है वो तो 1995 से चल रहा है और सब लोग थोड़ा थोड़ा बेच रहे हैं and they are doing millions of dollars in revenue also. पर PMF तो Joule को मिला, right? के यार handle ही नहीं कर पा रहे हम इतना सारा interest. So that's a little bit of some of my thoughts around PMF and how we should think about it.
Having said that, Yash, I think this was completely insightful, very brief, crisp, and I think how you related your journey and intertwined that part was very, very relatable for someone who's building a product in today's time. So
Awesome.
I wish you all the best. I see that
Thank
you
you,
built
yeah.
your product to 35 to 40%. I cannot wait for it to kind of explode when it's at 100%. And
Fingers crossed.
100% is not something which today when we say 100 on 100, it's something where by the time you reach 100, you move on to a different milestone altogether.
Correct.
So
Correct. So
I'm
when you
sure
reach
your
100, you
product,
become 80.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I wish you all the best to kind of reach that potential, and we look forward to collaborating yet again. Thank you on behalf of the mission. Thank you to all the participants, and stay tuned for the video.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Supriya. Looking forward to engaging with you. And I am Punjab team later as well. Thank you everyone for joining in. Super helpful. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.